And it's a great day in this all-America county, and the good Lord has blessed us with rain. And prayer is certainly answered. I had no idea it would rain on Saturday, but it did. And we've also been blessed with good health by a number of members of council. We have much to be thankful for. Before I turn it over to Mr. Gardner to lead us, I would like you to accept the fact that we have kind of altered in here, and we've got an administrator and our attorney up front so they can see the proceedings and hear everyone equitably. And then Mary is now on the left or right as you look at this panel. I do have one administrative thing to say. A number of people on the front row of the audience have complained that whereas I can't hear it, they can hear the mumblings and the side chatter. So if you're going to talk to someone in front or behind or next to you, kindly keep it quiet. I've asked Mr. Scott, the great Mr. Scott, I think that's redundant, to help us because I'm afraid I've got machine gun ears that have been blown out over 40 years of loud noises. So I can't hear when there's that sort of disruption, but the front row in the audience can. So I ask you to be courteous during these proceedings so that everyone can hear and you not disrupt the proceedings. I know you appreciate this is a great county and it's courteous. I just want to remind you. And with that, I'd ask you to stand and for the invocation and pledge of allegiance by Mr. Gardner. Thank you.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and we thank you for the opportunity to assemble here. We thank you for our great country where we have the freedoms to do this. We thank you for the men in uniform who have afforded us these freedoms, both locally and abroad. Father, we ask now that you would give us the discernment and wisdom as we do our county's business. We ask these things in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Gardner. And with that, we move to the first item, which is public comments. Mr. Morgan, can you cue us up, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. We have 5 individuals who have signed up to speak this evening. The first is Mr. Donnie Cato on stealing property.
Mr. Cato, please come on up. And as you do, I advise you all that this is a time for us to listen and not to have an exchange. Keep your comments kindly within 5 minutes, if you would. And secondly, we ask for decorum and with the official nature of this body. Sir, go right ahead.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Find it to be a privilege to be here this afternoon to speak to you about a very serious problem in the northeastern part of Kershaw County. Been going on for a number of years. And late today, I learned that the Sheriff's Department is in the process of making some changes that should help that situation. If everything happens that I heard was going to happen, that Mr. Garrett Greenway, will be housing up there in Bethune, along with a deputy that's coming to replace him. He got promoted to a investigator slot last week. And I want everybody to know that the people in Bethune, Timrod, Mount Pisgah, Buffalo, all the northeastern part of this county are appreciative of that. I want you to know that right up front before I get to the other part. Now, for many years, we've put up with that up there. And you can say you can lock your property up. Did you have your property locked up? I'll give you one example before I move on. A friend of mine down on the Timrod Highway or Highway 346 had 2 trailers, a car trailer and a smaller lawnmower type trailer. Had it locked up in a chain link fence, 6 foot high or higher. They went in there, they cut the chain link fence, took both of the trailers, the car trailer and the other trailer, and drove off with them. That's just one example of many, 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 many. There's very few families up there that haven't been touched by the stealing that's going on in the northeastern part of this county. just sickening. The day that I went to my farm, about September the 9th, I run a turkey farm up there for Ron Pressage, Dr. Pressage's farms. That's where I work and make a living. And I have to have my equipment to make a living. So when you get there, your lawnmower's gone, your weed eater's gone, your generators are gone, air compressors are gone, and on and on and on the list goes. And no sign of the equipment. That's been a month, so guess where it went to? Who knows? But it's gone. It ain't coming back. I know that for a fact. Because they haven't found the first piece, I don't think, of any of the stuff that has been taken. They robbed the church, Bethune Baptist Church. They took the van that belonged to the church, all the stuff they wanted out of the church, put it in their van, drove it under a low hangover area on the church, tore the van up. Then it went out to my brother's place, who owns a little country club out there, at the golf course, and they finished filling the van up with all his stuff that he has in the front part of the golf course. And then that Bethune Baptist Church van was found in Jefferson, right up the road, in the edge of the woods, about 3 or 4 weeks later. And they didn't have anything in there of any value left. So that's just some of the examples. Would like for you to be mindful of, and that you would support the Kershaw County Sheriff's Department in every endeavor that they take to try to put a stop to it. I don't know what it's going to take. It's been going on for years and years. And I know Lee has, like I said, he's making an effort in that part of the county, really for the first sheriff that I remember in my lifetime that has put forth an effort up there to try to help with some of the problems we have up there. Now, I have one other thing I want to share with you, that there is grant money. We're not just talking about Kershaw County money. There is grant money out there. Mr. Burns has the name of the young lady that knows about the grants. She has done the research on them. And all she asked me to ask the council is, do you have someone to write the grants? Write the grants. Does Kershaw County Council have somebody can do that? Or can you pay somebody to do that? She will be glad when Mr. Burns calls her. She will be glad to inform him of where the grants are available at. All she just needs is somebody to write them. And she is a nurse practitioner, and she is currently working in Hartsville, South Carolina, but she used to be the nurse practitioner in Bethune. So those are the two things I would like for you to consider, is to get the grants wrote, get the paperwork done for the grants, and support the Sheriff's Department. And I surely appreciate all that the Sheriff's done in getting some people up there to help us.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Morgan?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Scott Conley, and the subject is Highway 1.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of council. I appreciate y'all's time and the opportunity to stand before y'all today. Earlier today, I shared a letter that my board of directors at Mid-Carolina Credit Union had we assembled and agreed to and have submitted to y'all for consideration. We all know that there's been a lot of activity on Highway 1. I don't know anybody that's happy about the activity that's going on Highway 1 except maybe members of the DOT. We are not here to discuss necessarily the DOT today, but what we want the council to consider is ways that we can at least take what we've got and move forward in a positive fashion. When we built our new building right there on Highway 1 next door to Heritage Chevrolet, that was a proud moment for us. We are one of 2 financial institutions in Kershaw County that are home-based in this county. And we're proud that we are a part of Kershaw County. We dealt with DOT over significant months, years, as we worked to get onto that property. I'm not going to go into the details of what we did there, but things that they suggested while we were trying to get onto that property is they said, well, you can't have 2 curb cuts because your members can have access off the back of Roseboro. They can get to it from Ward Road. They can get to it from coming up, turning left onto Roseboro, coming from Camden. Well, what we have found out is our members are taking their life into their own hands trying to turn left when you're coming from Camden and trying to turn on to Roseboro. You get up there and you just mash down on the gas, close your eyes, and hope that you get across in time. And then at Ward Road, and when I go home, I go that way, and I'm facing traffic coming from the north end of 34, and none of us, I don't think, signal, right? So when you're trying to get across that intersection, if you're turning left, people are coming at you, they're not signaling. They don't know if you're signaling. They don't know nobody knows where they're going. So what we are asking in this letter is simply whatever y'all can do, whatever parties need to be involved, whatever resources that we can marshal together, is let's get those 2 intersections fixed. At a minimum, we need turn signals at the intersection of Bulware, Roseboro, and Highway 1. We need the one where you can turn left onto Roseboro as you're coming from Camden, and you can turn left onto Bulware as you're coming toward Camden from Lugoff. There's already turn lanes there, okay? So it's provisions are made. It's just getting the lights. The other intersections I know it's going to take more work. Somebody's going to have to look at it. An engineer's going to have to look at it, but it is not a safe intersection either, and that needs to be taken care of. What we didn't include in the letter are a couple other things. I know in the construction of our building, the work that we had to do on Highway 1. The work we had to do on Highway 1 was work the DOT should have been doing through the years in regular maintenance and upkeep, making sure the ditches are dug deep enough, making sure that they're maintained properly. So that would be an item to add to this list, as well as I know in front of our building, we've got a big old dirt pile sitting there where they took out a median, encouraged the DOT to come out. Are y'all going, the county and the city of Camden and the county of Kershaw have standards that they expect we, the business owners of the community, to abide by. Can we hold the DOT responsible for similar standards? At least spray some hydroseeding out there. Make it look nicer, because it looks terrible. And I'm not aware of them having any plans to do that. So we've been dealt a bad hand, but let's figure out how we can make things a positive and make things safer is what we're encouraging. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Conley. Just for the benefit of everyone here, Mary, each member of council's got a copy of the letter. And did you get a copy to the media as well from Midlands Credit Union? Yeah, okay, so we have at least 2 here. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Moore.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Tom Webb speaking on 3 things.
There's a story in the Chronicle Independent today about a giant serpent coming to South Carolina. It doesn't say serpent, but that's what it is. It's hundreds of miles long and 8 miles wide. It's being called heritage corridors. It's going to connect various sites, Revolutionary War sites, to celebrate those things. That's the cheese in the trap. Going to celebrate our Revolutionary War by taking away a little bit of our independence and the freedom that we're accustomed to along these heritage corridors. There's going to be $10 million spent on it, according to this article, over several years, and it's going to affect the way people handle their property. 8 miles wide. Can you believe that? A heritage corridor that will start up in North Carolina, wind through South Carolina, come through Camden, go all the way down to the coast. 8 miles wide, a heritage corridor. If you don't believe in a new world order, what is this? It's a giant serpent that I think is the offspring of the old serpent, hatched out in the United Nations. That's probably where this bright idea comes from. The United Nations likes to get into all sorts of things to control us. It's coming more and more and more. They tried to get a control of the ocean a while back, and it fell through. They wanted to control the ocean, anybody that was on it. They wanted to control the rivers that flowed into the ocean and every stream that flowed into a river. And any little brook in your backyard that flowed into any creek, that was all going to be controlled with buffer zones. And then right now there are people who are running for president, trying to run for president, and among the Democrats who are saying that the United Nations should control all borders, our border, everybody else's borders, to determine who can immigrate and who can't. So I think it's a terrible thing. The United Nations has been here too long. It's in our country. It should go, and our country should get out of it. We've been funding it. It's full of enemies to the United States. The other thing I wanted to speak about briefly is eminent domain. I think that's coming. It used to be that private property was rather well protected, but now it seems that on occasion it can be considered underutilized, and some government agency can take it from one individual and give it to another. You know, you're paid for it, but still taking it, take property and present it to another person who will develop it because it will produce more taxes. It's almost as though government is getting into real estate. And when you do that, buying and selling property, there's plenty of room for things that are not kosher. Some of my forebears would have said it's not kosher. It doesn't smell right. And I'm not blaming anybody here, but that water park smacks of it, just a little bit, at least a little bit, $11,000 an acre for mostly property that's had no commercial value. Where did that money come from? Where did it go? How do you justify that? There are a lot of people now who ask that question. They don't raise it in front of y'all, but this question is still there. I hear it. They don't trust their own government because there's something about it that is not kosher. I wish that this is my request, that you would come up with something in writing that we could check on, double check. Where did that money come from? Where did it go? Why was that property worth $11,000 an acre? And it's beautiful property, but it doesn't have any commercial value, not most of it anyway. But I went out there Saturday. Now, here's a high point. I did go to the Touch a Truck thing Saturday. It was great. It really was. There were so many young people there getting to see their heroes, people in law enforcement, rescue people, people that run that heavy equipment, firemen, all of those are heroes. And they got to meet them, and they got to get in this equipment and actually put their hands on the controls and operate it, of course, under great supervision. And it all seemed to be done so well that I appreciate whoever set that up and made it happen. But it could have happened somewhere else. It didn't have to happen on that water park. That I'm still uncertain about whether I should trust y'all or not. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Mr. Morgan?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Next, we have Ms. Amber Conger speaking on the library.
Good evening, Chairman, members of council. I wanted to take a few moments to share some thoughts with you as a departing department head. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Amber Conger, and I've served as a library director for the past 4 years. My last day with the library will be October 18th. First and foremost, thank you for the support you've given to the library and to me personally during my tenure here. It has meant so much to all of us at KCL to know that you stand behind our work, that you speak well of us in the community, and best of all, that you use your library as a tremendous resource that it is. It is your support that will keep the library thriving for years to come. Since I won't be here to present the library's budget request to you next year, I wanted to discuss this now on behalf of the new director. Here's a picture of our library's bookmobile from 1936. Thankfully, it's not the same one we're still driving today. But as you can see, Kershaw County Library has a long and proud tradition of providing services through our bookmobile to outlying areas of the county and to areas where residents have limited transportation. This shouldn't be a surprise to you all, but we desperately need a new vehicle now. Our current bookmobile has kept the roads hot since 1998, taking books, learning, smiles, and opportunities all over our county for the past 21 years. However, just in the past 2 years, we've had 20-plus repair issues, creating months of downtime where it is off the road and out of service. The batteries keep dying, the generator blows, the roof hatch leaks, the steps fell off. It just goes on and on. It's dying a slow, painful death. It's been in the shop for the last month and a half. We missed Touch a Truck, which we were not happy about, and we just can't keep going on like this when people are depending on us. When our budget for next year makes its way to you, please honor our capital request. It is time. I also wanted to recognize and thank 3 people in particular: Vic Carpenter, Danny Templer, and Sandra Brown. What our county has with these 3 can be summed up in one word: exceptional. I know this because I know almost every other library director in the state, and I've literally seen jaws drop when I tell them how much I appreciate and enjoy working with our county administration. What we have in these 3 is not the typical experience in other counties. They truly are gifted administrators. Fair, reasonable, thorough, extremely knowledgeable, and kind, and the fact that they're fun too is just the icing on the cake. Anytime I brought a question or a concern to them, I was fully heard, taken seriously, and treated with respect. They never fail to see the human side to every problem. Please don't take them for granted. They really are the best. And frankly, I don't think you all get enough credit either. I have sat through many of your meetings and have seen how you are truly trying to come to solutions that are reasonable and equitable. And as a county employee, I've appreciated that. Thank you. It has been an absolute honor, a privilege, and a joy to lead your library and to serve this community. I could not be prouder of the team we have built at our library, of our dedicated library board and friends group, and of the talented professionals that I have worked with countywide. I expect to keep hearing wonderful things from our library and our county for the years to come. God bless you, and I offer my very best wishes for your continued success.
Thank you very much indeed. Mr. Morgan.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, finally to speak tonight, we have Ms. Linda Franklin Moore speaking on SCDOT.
Hello, I am Linda Franklin Moore. I reside in Camden. And
Bring the mic over there, Ms. Moore. Thank you.
Mr. Snodgrass, I believe I'm in your district. As a Kershaw County resident, I am concerned about all areas of our county, and I always look to help and serve. I had not planned on speaking tonight. I don't feel it's necessary to do that all the time, but I had been asked to report on my conversations with Lori Campbell of SCDOT regarding the median issue in Lugoff. She said she discussed this issue prior to the project's beginning with Kershaw County staff, and that they seemed to have no problem with what they wanted to do with the medians. The elimination of many median crossovers were due to a high rate of rear-end collisions, and it had become a safety issue. However, there was no traffic flow study done prior to the beginning of the project. And there was not expected to be one for at least 6 months, according to Ms. Campbell. She also suggested that people could make U-turns at the intersections, but I had to inform her there were several no U-turn signs, and there are some folks, little old ladies trying to get to Hawthorne Pharmacy, that you don't want to make U-turns at those intersections. She suggested that drivers use business parking lots to turn around, and I explained that business owners do not want the liability. They do not want the added congestion in their parking lots. So then she finally suggested, well, you could just go down Longtown Road and find somewhere to turn around or do a 3-point turn. Again, I said there are people that you do not want making you 3-point turns on Longtown Road. She suggested too, as Mid-Carolina said, Roseboro Road and the DuPont and Boulevard and DeWitt, those residential areas. And I told her that those roads were not designed to be used as a thoroughfare. So my suggestion to the county is we should use our engineers. We should do our own traffic flow study for the benefit of our citizens, perhaps taking down some of the no U-turn signs. Now, she did mention to me that when they did the paving, they were moving the sensors for the traffic lights from further back up to the white line so that those turning lanes that are already available, when you go to have the arrow, the first car will trigger the arrow, and they did that with the new road paving. But again, I just wanted to report to you on my conversation with Ms. Campbell and where they stand on this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Mr. Morgan?
Nobody else has signed up to speak, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and that concludes public comments. We now move to the next item on the agenda on the screen, which is a public hearing in regard to an ordinance by Kershaw County Council authorizing the conveyance to Bethune Rural Water Company of 0.35 acres for the Rural Water Company dated 6 December 1979. With that, I'll open up the public hearing. Later on in the agenda item, you'll see where there will be a vote. I open the public hearing now. Seeing there is no one coming forward, I'll close the public hearing, and we move on to adoption of agenda. The agenda is on the board. Can we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Gardner, a second from Mr. Tucker. In order received. Any discussion on the agenda? Yeah, Mr. Bozard.
Under new business, been brought up about the council meeting times.
Yes.
Mr. Jones and Mr.
Would you speak into the mic, Mr. Bozo,
voted
talking to
against
Mike?
that,
Thank you, Jimmy.
and is it proper to bring it back up by these gentlemen?
I got a determination on that. They cannot make a motion to change the item, but they can put it on the agenda. Every council member has the absolute right to put an item on the agenda. But in terms of how this is phrased, he stays within the rules that we have as a team, that no one who voted on the non-prevailing side, that is, who voted against something that passed, no one can then put it back on the agenda for a vote. So this is placed on the agenda for discussion. Mr. Jones, do you want to further discuss on that?
I do. I would like some clarification. Is Mr. Bozar requesting that I be taken off the agenda?
He's asking a ruling, and I gave it that it can be on there based on what I have as the senior parliamentarian and what I have from our attorney. So it can stay on, but Mr. Jones and Mr. Snodgrass, being on the non-prevailing side, cannot entertain a motion to change what has already been decided by the council.
I don't think we have any intention of doing that, Mr. Chairman.
All right, that's the question he asked.
We don't have any intention of, we know what the motion was, and we know we can't redo that motion that was made at the last county council meeting.
Very good.
So I guess what I was curious to know is, Mr. Bozar, is he interested in us was he trying to get it taken off the agenda?
Mr. Bozard, do you want to answer that question?
No, sir, I asked for a clarification.
All right, thank you so
And
much.
we have it. Any further discussion? Mr. Snodgrass?
My name was evoked. I was just going to give a little point of clarification. So according to Robert's Rule of Orders, and I looked into this, a motion to reconsider cannot come from the defeated side at that current meeting or the meeting immediately following. So technically, this is the second meeting since we passed this. So according to my interpretation, this is fair game, however you want to phrase it.
Well, that is not my interpretation. The interpretation is for this meeting is, and we can debate parliamentary matters later because I'm the senior parliamentarian here, is, and I've got rulings from the legal side, is that this can remain on the agenda. And that was the question. Yeah, you have another question, Mr. Jones?
Yeah, I think we're putting the cart before the horse because we haven't even gotten to that part of the agenda, so I haven't explained what I plan to do. I mean, I've got some information on the agenda under new business, but why don't we just wait and see when we get there?
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Snodgrass and Mr. Jones. That was very entertaining. With that, any further discussion from you, Mr. Bozard? Any further discussion? Nope. With that, let's move to a vote to approve the agenda as it's established. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And it's approved. We move on to a resolution. A little bit out of order, but we did this because we got a gang of important young men here wearing the Legionnaire hat and the VFW symbols, and we want to make sure we recognize them and get them home to warm milk and cookies tonight, right, Mr. Lackey? But I will state before I open this resolution that 1 year ago this week, Sergeant York, today, in the year 2018, killed 25 of the enemy and captured 132 and got a Congressional Medal of Honor. A little buck sergeant from the backwoods, not too far from here in Tennessee, and got a Congressional Medal of Honor, and he was a conscientious objector. And there were brave people in World War I about 100 years ago. Also, about 100 years ago, 101 years ago, in 1918, the Lost Battalion was surrounded by the Germans in Belleau Woods and surrounded. And what was then the U.S. Army Air Corps, and today is the 50th Tactical Fighter Wing at Shaw Air Force Base, not even 28 miles from here, found them, and 2 men lost their lives in an aircraft and didn't come home, but they won it with the Congressional Medal of Honor in Belleau Woods 101 years ago today. So out of that conflict came the American Legion. I will read the resolution, and then I'll ask our American Legion brothers to come forward. A resolution recognizing James Leroy Belk, American Legion Post 17th, on their 100th anniversary. Whereas Post 17 was originally chartered in 19 September 1919 and consisted of the following members: Ralph Shannon, Charles Villapig, John Team, Julius Campbell, Alfred McLeod, Marion Kirkland, Charles Little, Walter Rush, James DeLoach, F. Belk, Whit Boykin, Jack Watkins. The South Carolina American Legion Department signed Post 17's charter, and whereas Post 17 became the Belk American Legion Post 17 in March of 1920 in honor of one of their members who had died in combat. He was killed in France, October the 13th. And whereas Post 17 has met in 6 different locations, finally settling at his current location at the corner of West DeKalb and Chestnut Ferry. As Post 17 ends its first century, its members who serve their country in wars and conflicts continue to serve their community. They support 2 Legion baseball teams, delegates to the Palmetto Boys State, and assist in auxiliary sending representatives to Girls State, sponsor an oratorical contest and other youth activities. They support community activities and living veterans in commemoration of the services of departed ones, and the list goes on. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Kershaw County Council recognizes the American Legion Post 17 for their loyalty and dedication to the veterans and citizens of Kershaw County and honors them on their 100th anniversary. Can we have a motion to approve the resolution?
So made.
Mr. Bozard, second?
Second.
From Mr. Gardner. Any discussion? We have proud veterans up here today that are about to vote on this. Seeing there is no discussion, we're ready to move to a vote. All those in favor, so signify. And Mary, it's unanimous, and we will do a formal presentation to you at your next meeting. I ask the young men of the Legion to come forward and get a real quick picture. Please come forward on your 100th anniversary.
That way, and they're gonna take your picture.
Good there. All right. Cheese. Yeah, cheese, please. Me? Good.
What a great group. Thank you, everybody. We move now to the next item, which is approval of minutes dated 10 September. It's on the board and at tab B. Can we have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve the minutes from September
Yeah,
10th.
Mr. Tucker, second?
Second.
Thank you, David. Mr. Snodgrass, any discussion? Okay, very good. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And it's unanimous. And the minutes are approved. Mary, thanks for sorting through that. That was a lengthy meeting. We move now to a proclamation, if I can catch up with myself here. Recognizing Community Planning Month. It's at tab C and on the board. There it is. And let me read it, and then we can get quickly on to a vote. Community Planning Month proclamation, whereas change is constant and affects all cities, towns, suburbs, counties, and townships, rural areas, and other places. And whereas community planning and planners can help manage this change in a way that provides better choices for how people work, live, and play. And whereas community planning provides an opportunity for all residents to be equally involved in making choices that determine the shared vision of their community. And whereas the full benefits of planning requires public officials and citizens who understand, support, and demand excellence in planning and plan implementation. And whereas the month of October is designated as National Community Planning Month throughout the United States and its territories, and whereas the American Planning Association and its professional institute, the American Institute of Certified Planners, endorses National Community Planning Month as an opportunity to highlight the contributions sound planning and plan implementation make to the quality of neighborhoods and environment. And whereas the celebration of National Community Planning Month gives us the opportunity to publicly recognize the participation and dedication of the members of our planning commissions and other citizens. Whereas we recognize the many valuable contributions made by the Department of Planning and Zoning staff of Kershaw County who are here tonight. Yep. And extend our heartfelt thanks for the continued commitment to the public service by these professionals. Therefore, be it resolved that October is designated as the Community Planning Month in Kershaw County. Can we have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Yep, Mr. Tucker, a second.
Second.
Second from Mr. Snodgrass. Any discussion? I would say that we also have the Planning and Zoning Committee that works with Mr. Conley, and then we have appeals and all a range of volunteers that provide their input, and all of that is probably manifested in the comprehensive plan and the Vision 2030 and the survey that's coming out on Vision 2030. Here we go again. Planning never stops, and to keep it alive, you need these surveys. A little bit more about that later. But last year, in the last 3 years, we've had a survey on Vision 2030 to keep it alive and relevant. And so I just wanted to recognize Mike's hard work on that, along with Vic and his team. Well, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. And Mary, it is adopted. Thank you very much. And Mike and your team, thank you very much, sir. We move now to resolutions. The first is a resolution on WellChem affiliate and a joinder agreement. This one's going to take a short amount of explanation. Vic and Mr. Morgan, would you like to weigh in, please?
Okay, sure. Mr. Chairman, members of council, you have in front of you tonight a resolution reflecting, it's called a joinder agreement between Kershaw County and WellChem.
Excuse me a minute. Mike, I didn't recognize. Can you tell me who's here from the Planning and Zoning Commission?
2 of them, 3 of them.
Please. I'm sorry, they got up and left, and I didn't even call their names out.
We have our Planning Commission Chairman, Mr. Eichelberger is over there, Kevin Scarf, and...
Kersey.
What's that?
Go ahead.
What did you say? I'm sorry. Deb.
Birch.
What? George Harkins is our other Planning Commission member up there. And we had our staff here as well, Rhonda Doherty, Megan Mims, Raleigh Reynolds, Will Branham, and Vivian Rogers, and Joey Adams Rosinski as our staff members that were here today.
Thank you very much, and let's have a round of applause for them. Thank you. Thank you, Claude. Thank you very much. All right, we're moving back to that, Mr. Carpenter. Sorry to interrupt.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, Wellchem Industries is an industry located in Kershaw County near Elgin. In 2014, they entered into a fee in lieu agreement with the county. What this resolution is doing is it acknowledges the fact that there is another company of Wellchems operating within the company that has also been making investments. So what this resolution does is it will merge the investments of Wellchem Specialties along with Wellchem US into a single entity. They will continue to make the investments that they agreed to. It's merely a paperwork to reflect the fact that they had two different legal entities doing the same job on the property.
Very good. But I'm sure there'll be a question or two. Let's get it on before the board here. Can I have a motion to open up this for approval, please?
Yes, made.
Mr. Bozard, and a second from Mr. Connell. Any discussion?
Yes.
Go ahead, Al.
Excuse me. You said it was within, you talking about within the same building?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Other discussion? As I understand it, this is a business arrangement to streamline the P&L so that it is one entity for our purposes as a county that exercises tax authority over them. Is that too broad a statement there, Tommy?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman. Basically, what this also does it allows for the fee in lieu of tax agreement that goes with Wildchem to go to its subsidiary, Wildchem Specialties, so that way they can continue their investment and get the fee in lieu of tax agreement benefits.
Well, I'm not going to say that again, but I think that was a yes. Yeah, Sammy?
My question is, Mr. Carpenter, this doesn't affect our rate of collections or give us any extra money or anything like that?
No, sir. They've been making the investment. They just want it to all be under the same fee.
Okay, thank you.
All right, the discussion? All right, seeing there is none, we move to a vote. All in favor of this resolution, signify by raising your hand. And it's unanimous, Mary. We move to the next item, which is a resolution expressing displeasure with the South Carolina Department of Transportation, Highway 1. It's at tab E. Mr. Jones, you want to open this one up for a motion?
I do. I'd like to make the motion that we put on the floor a resolution expressing the displeasure with South Carolina DOT on Highway 1 that has been previously discussed earlier in this meeting.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Second from, I lost track. Is that from you, Sammy?
No, sir.
Yeah. Okay, Al, thank you very
My
much.
voice hadn't grown up quite like that yet.
I stand corrected, I apologize. Mr. Bogzard made the second. Jimmy, you want to open it up?
Did you want to read it first, or you want to have discussion first?
You had mentioned to me that you might wanted to add something.
Well, what I'd like to do is, I want to thank two folks for being here tonight. Scott, thank you so much for coming forth. I think your letter absolutely goes right in line with the resolution that I've had placed on the agenda tonight. And Linda Franklin Moore, thank you so much. I was not aware that staff had full knowledge and approved DOT or we're okay with DOT coming over there and doing that. That's something I did not know. You know, I've had many, many phone calls, which I'm sure most of you had. I heard there were hundreds of phone calls to DOT, and the business folks over there were not notified. I was not notified that the major changes were going to be. Do they legally have to notify me? Probably not. But would it have been the courteous thing to do? Probably so. Actually, it would have been. I'm really, really upset as to what some of the businesses had to go through. And some of them have talked about the loss of revenue due to this, people not being able to get in safely, the safety factor of it. And I agree 100% with everything you said, Scott, and thank you so much for being here. And Linda, thank you for being here as well. I would actually like to see this passed. I hope it'll at least get 4 votes, but I'd like to see it unanimous, because I tell you, I am absolutely unhappy with the way DOT handled this project. And also, by the way, DOT has been telling folks that we knew about it. I'd walk into a business, they say, well, so-and-so from DOT was here and said that they notified the county. I said, well, we didn't know anything about it. So there's been some miscommunication or misunderstanding or something, but I think this resolution will go a long ways in showing the folks that we represent that we're going to stand up for them on their behalf. And I'd also, but never mind, that's it, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Yeah, I did want to mention, though, Jimmy, would you mention Scott's letter, please?
Well, that's what I hesitated on, but I will.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to force you into it, but,
No, you didn't push me into anything.
okay.
I don't have a problem because I think this letter supports the resolution. I don't have a problem, to my members of council, with this letter being attached to our resolution.
Ms.
An
Jones,
amendment.
do you
Yes.
need an amendment? I'm happy to make an amendment to it.
I have no problems with that.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Tucker.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make the amendment that we adopt Mr. Scott Connolly's letter into the resolution.
All right, we have an amendment before us. Can we have a second?
Second.
Second for Mr. Gardner. You want to discuss that real quick, Sammy?
Well, I mean, I think it's already been discussed and well stated between the bodies that have spoken this earlier today. The resolution definitely talks about the displeasure of, I think, the citizens and council and everybody who travels those roads. And I have to agree with Mr. Connolly. I think everyone does need new driver's lessons, but that's another story for another day. With that being said, it just gives some action to what DOT can do versus just, telling them how dissatisfied we are. Now, here is some resolutions that you can take and correct some problems and fix it. So that's why I thought the letter just coincided.
I agree.
Yeah, Mr. Bozard, please.
Thank you very much. The resolution is good, that letter's good, but it ain't gonna get no further in this room. I would like to see us take that resolution and that letter and read our letter and send it to DOT so they can see everything. I want to see some action on it.
Well, that's what.
That's my move.
I'm looking at what Mr. Conley said, and there is a call for action very well stated on the second page, urging County Council, Jimmy, to do whatever is in our power to improve. So that seems to be what Mr. Bozard's talking about, a letter and then maybe a follow-up. What do you think, Sam?
Well, also,
What do you think,
Mr.
Jimmy? It's yours.
Chairman, yes, with also holding our local legislative delegation responsible too. You know, they have more authority over this than we do. We actually have no authority over DOT.
Right, that's true.
They come in like thieves in the night. They rearrange our whole landscape, then they're gone. And it was not our local DOT. And it does get me upset when I feel like misinformation has been put out there. The people of this county deserve the facts, they deserve the truth, and I'm just not really a happy camper with this tonight, to be honest with you. And I think that, Sammy, I appreciate your amendment. I think it's on the floor. I think that letter says it all. It supports this resolution. This resolution says it all. And there is action in these two pieces of work.
Could it be interpreted, just for Sammy and for Jimmy, who brought this together with an amendment, would it be interpreted that this would then turn into a letter from County Council to our delegation and to the DOT
That
to
was my
follow up on
motion.
Scott's thing? Could that be interpreted, or does that need to be an
That
amendment
was not
further?
my interpretation. My interpretation was, which I don't have a problem with that either. I just want to make sure we let DOT know our displeasure. What we have on the floor now is a motion to accept this resolution. Then we have an amendment on the floor to attach this letter to be a part of this resolution. So if Mr. Bozard wants to make an amendment on that amendment, he certainly can.
I just did. I thought I did.
Okay, restate it, and we'll get it on the floor. Did we have a letter or something of that nature, Al?
Yes, we formulate a letter to the DOT along with this proposal and the letter from Mid-Carolina with our displeasure with their actions over in the Lugoff area.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Point of order. Do we not need to take care of the amendment to the motion first, and then
No,
want
we
to
don't.
pile these
No,
up?
we don't have to, thank you
Oh,
very much.
all right.
It would be if there was a causative linkage, but there's not.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir, go ahead.
if I may, I'm not going to second that. I think that's redundant. I think we've got everything we need in the letter from the Mid-Carolina.
How's it gonna get out of this room?
Excuse me one
Well,
second.
we need a second, and then we can talk about it.
Okay.
Is there a second to Mr. Bozard's? Nope, there is not a second, so the motion fails. So we're back to Mr. Tucker's amendment to add the letter. Any further amendments? Any further discussion?
Mr.
Sammy?
Chairman. I yield to Mr. Conley.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Actually, the resolution nor the letter include everything. There's been time, resources, and effort and data gathered on what's going on in the West Wateree area. It was called the West Wateree Transportation Study, and it happened a number of years ago. The CMCOG's aware of it, Central Midlands Council of Government's aware of it, and they adopted it 2.5+ years ago. DOT is aware of it. The county's met with them and said, these are the issues we have. Traffic counts were taken at the time, but those projects have not been placed in any priority status. I would suggest an appropriate amendment might be to take the thrust of the resolution. I think DOT gets it. Nobody was happy with it. I personally expressed it, and probably all the council members up here as well, along with numerous citizens and business owners who receive these calls. Take the thrust of Mr. Conley and his board's letter that shows, I wrote down the quote, Scott, move forward in a positive way with some achievables, and then also perhaps strongly emphasize the West Wateree Transportation Study, which has been in the queue with projects for years that have not been funded. Looking at these three pieces, I'd say that's probably the best way to move forward. And I can fashion that if needed in the shape of an amendment, if council's interested.
I think that would be necessary, yeah. But Jimmy, what do you think?
You want to go ahead?
Right quick. I just think that, the letter states and the resolution, this is not our only step that we can take. It's a start. So let's move forward with this. And then any of you up here that want to bring something back by next meeting, by all means, please feel free.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I agree with Mr. Tucker exactly. I don't want to water this down by keep adding more and more things on. My concern is what happened to the West Wateree business owners and the folks that live over there and travel that area. What happened to them and what happened to us a few weeks ago when they came in, reorganized the entire landscape. That's what we're here tonight about. The rest of it is all great and good, but I want to stay focused on what the resolution is stating, and I think that letter absolutely supports it.
Yes, Mr. Bozard.
Somebody tell me, how's this resolution and this letter gonna get out of this room?
If I could, and since you threw it open, I find myself decisively with Mr. Connell. We spent $15,000 on a West Wateree transportation study, and that is the context in which Mr. Conley's very fine letter is formed that turns into action. And if the resolution is passed without an implementer that goes back in a formal way to the people who have offended us with this system of transportation, then it doesn't have anything beyond the reaches of this room and the media report on that. So I find myself, if the resolution passes, I would love to see us take up on Mr. Connell's suggestion of a letter that's in the context of the study and Mr. Conley's letter, maybe at the next meeting. Is that how you see it, Ben? Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman,
I got it, Ben.
I'll just clarify and kind of follow up a little bit. So I hadn't seen this letter until tonight. So
Yeah, none of us
these ideas
have.
are just coming as we sit here tonight. But I believe I could say something on how it would be interpreted. Mr. Carpenter, you have to help me. So I don't want the county to be officially speaking out of both sides of its mouth. Whenever we say, CMCOG, we present you with this study, the West Wateree Transportation Study, that's based off of data, actual traffic counts. Please adopt these projects, okay? And then those get into a queue with DOT for possible funding through I think it's the Q-tip program, and there's a couple of other funding mechanisms that are used by these COGs to say, where does your project rank in relation to other counties' projects that are already in the queue? So I wouldn't want to confuse what we've already told DOT with, hey, now this is our highest priority. Mr. Conley is obviously a very high priority. my business is nearby, and I care about this area very much. But there are also other areas that are already covered, and the projects are already currently being ranked by Reggie over at the CMCOG. So I don't want to shift directions unless that's actually our intent, is to say that all these projects that have already been ranked, we now want them to move in some other direction without the traffic counts. Can you speak to that, Mr. Carpenter?
Mr. Cannell, members of council, we have provided this study to the COG and to SCDOT. The sources of funds for various projects are different. These particular projects were safety projects. They were being funded out of the increase in the penny sales tax, as opposed to guide share funds that would go through the COG, but they all have the study in front of it, and the study did go through and it prioritized projects, everything west of the river in Kershaw County. It did include upgrades to intersections on US 1, of which Ward Road was one of the intersections upgraded, as well, I believe, as Bullware was one of the intersections. They were not the highest priority, however, in those studies. Other intersections along US 601, along Whiting Whiting Way and White Pond Road had higher rankings in that. So to Mr. Cannell's point, we have already told them we have priorities and these are our priorities. And we have encouraged them to adopt those priorities and incorporate them. So what we would need to do is we need to amend what we have previously said and include this, and if it is the will of council, make it the highest priority or a new priority that fits in and let them rank it where they see it falling. But it would be out of the realm of our current list of priorities.
I will say that that's excellent advice in my understanding as well. But go ahead now, yours, sir.
Mr. Carpenter.
Yes, sir.
What was the limits of that Westwater Restart study? I didn't think it came into Lugoff.
No,
Yeah.
it did, yes, sir. It went all the way, US 1. The corridor that is studied was US 1 from Elgin to the river, and US 601 from the interstate to US 1.
Yeah.
It did come all the way through Lugoff to the river.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I'd ask everyone to remember now that this was a very deliberate effort that Mr. Connell and Mr. Carpenter are talking to. And when we change priorities, which Mr. Jones and Mr. Tucker are not asking us to do, they're just merely highlighting it right now, we also should talk to a person such as the mayor of Elgin, who happens to be here, who participated in that study. Thank you for coming, Mayor. I got to yield to Mr. Tucker. Sir, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Connor, I just want to say, because I've sat on the transportation since I've existed in the Santee Lynch's COG, and I'm on that committee, those priorities change very often. I would encourage us to include this, as Mr. Carpenter has said, because not only do they look at what is prioritized, they look at what is actually fundable. These projects may cost a lot less than a major project that you have as priority number one that they can go ahead and take care of, and they will move that up. We don't have all these projects in the city of Camden and Kershaw County from Santee Lynch's because we didn't push them through the TIP program down there. As they came up, we fed them in, and then we kept arranging and prioritizing. So I would be of the advice and of recommending that we do submit this along with what you're talking about and keep pushing.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
just
I'm sorry, David.
No.
Go ahead, Ben.
okay, thank you,
finish your thought.
Mr. Tucker. So I'm glad you brought that up. The Santee Lynch's COG has been very responsive and taking great care of
They
Kershaw
have.
County. I've asked Mr. Carpenter a set of, I don't know, probably 15 questions, maybe 10. 15 might be too many, but detailed questions about the actual funding per capita that Kershaw County receives from the CMCOG in relation to projects that they push forward, funded by the state or otherwise, over the last decade, just the last decade. And I'm willing to settle for the last 5 years to get a response, but they've not been responded to yet. And that's been months. So I think the fractured nature of Kershaw County's COG seats, it disserves Kershaw County overall, because you have one COG that's looking at transportation and I believe economic development issues.
Yes, sir.
And they do a study that doesn't look at the fastest growing population in Kershaw County in the West Wateree area. And the two should be harmonized. I don't know necessarily how we resolve that, but I do know that we're typically on the short end of the stick when it comes to CMCOG pushing our projects and getting things funded. because sitting on that board for a couple years now hasn't moved much. Hasn't moved much at all, which is why I think we have to focus on the data and rely on things that have already been funded. And, you know, again, I'm happy to fashion an amendment if it will be useful that would incorporate some of what we've already said about what we believe in transportation and the West Water Transportation Study. I think we'd be remiss if we left it out in this conversation.
Yeah, would it be useful, Ben, I got to get to David, would it be useful, Ben, to do that and have that ready at the next meeting in November, and this then go on forward? That's where I'm tending to be leaning with Mr. Jones and Mr. Tucker.
I agree.
Yeah. Hey, David, I'm
Yeah,
terribly
I just
sorry.
wanted
Go ahead.
to, 2 comments and then a question for Mr. Carpenter. Mr. Jones, thank you for bringing this up. I appreciate your passion, and I think it represents all of us as far as our displeasure with what's happening. However, I do appreciate the Mid-Carolina letter. I think it's a great addition. Obviously, I'm one that I always want to extend the olive branch any way I can. So I feel like pulling these 2 things together not only expresses our disappointment in the DOT, but it also does it in a way where perhaps we don't sever any relationships that we already have with our local DOT folks. And I believe we can do it. I believe tonight we can come out of this room and we can come up with not just a resolution, but also a letter and a plan of action. So I would encourage us to do that, to go ahead and put these 2 together, and then also pursue what Mr. Cannell is suggesting to us. Mr. Carpenter, so I've heard that our staff was aware of this. Are we confusing the local DOT shed staff with county staff in that statement? Or was Public Works aware of something coming down the pike?
Ms. Snodgrass has been said several times tonight that county staff was aware, and it's the first time that people were hearing this. Here's the DOT came to county staff with a rendition of what they were looking at doing. That's a normal process. You come, you have a period of time to review it, to get comments, to collect data, and then you get back in touch with them with the data. They provided us this information. We had barely had a chance to have this information, then they went out and did the project. So was staff aware that they were thinking of doing something? Yes. Was staff aware that this project was happening with the implication that we had known about it for some time, with the implication that we had communicated with them and sat down with them and gone over? No, sir. No, sir. We did not have any reasonable amount of time to receive this information, study it, get it communicated to council members for their review as well. That's a normal process that is followed. That did not happen. So yes, technically staff was aware that they were talking of doing something. Staff was not aware that they were going to do this, nor do we have any reasonable amount of time to reach out and provide any feedback to them. It was within days of it being dropped off here that it was done. And that's not normal.
So in essence, they were on the tractor calling you saying, hey, by the way, we're doing this.
It was pretty close.
Gotcha.
Mr. Pretty close, sir.
Yeah, okay, Ben, go ahead.
That's a great point, Mr. Snodgrass, because it's also just sad that whenever a private business asks for additional curb cuts or something like that, you have to fund it as the private business, and then you have to meet DOT's satisfaction with all the data. You got to pay for it. And here, it seems like maybe they piggybacked off of Mid-Carolina's traffic counts. I don't even know. The data wasn't presented to us, but I can't speak to that. The normal process is you're able to get the traffic counts done first. You'll see the strips go across the road, and they make you pay for it. And here, I don't know if that had happened.
Mr. Jones, sir.
Okay, here's where I'm at. We have a motion on the resolution, and we have an amendment with the letter. I would like to see, I think Mr. Connell brings up some very valid points. I just would not like to see them attached to this. I'd like to see them brought back at the next month's, because we have a meeting a month away,
I think that's where we're headed.
the next month's county council meeting.
I think
Thank you.
I think that's where we're headed, and I'm ready to move into the voting. We have an amendment?
Let me say one thing.
All right, go right ahead, sir.
I talked with Mr. Carpenter about this when I first started addressing this thing about 3 weeks ago, and he told me the staff had heard about it. and I talked to Laura Campbell, who is the project engineer on this job. I spent about 35 minutes on the phone with her, and she told me that this was kept out of county's hands because it wasn't none of the county's doings. They didn't want us to get blamed for it. So that's why they didn't really come out and tell her. I said, well, we could have had a little bit of publicity. And she apologized the way it was handled. She says in the future it will be handled different. And I asked her about the study, and she says that they are going to do a study for those turn lanes. And I said, are you hiring somebody to do this study or you doing it yourself? She said, no, our staff is doing it. And I said, what is the projection for completion? And she says, hopefully by the end of November, that the study will be finished. And I said, the action will be taken after that, to whether you're going to put these lanes back in or what you're going to do. She said, yes. So I'm looking for the end of November, that some of this is going to cut back into play. At the same time, as that letter said there, I'd already talked to engineers about putting a stoplight in that area between 34 and Bowyer Road. And they're in the process of looking at that right now. So some action has been taken, and it's been worked on. And all this that we've talked about tonight is just going to back up whatever we talked about here and what I'm telling you about. The only thing is I'd like to see it, as it was said, come back next month with this. But this proposal and Mid-Carolina's letter has got to get out of this office. If it don't stay in, if it stays in this room, it ain't going no place.
Thank you very much. I'm ready to call the question. We have an amendment before us from Mr. Tucker that recommends that, directs that the letter from Mr. Conley be included in the resolution. I'm ready to move on and vote on that. All those in favor, so signify. And it's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Tucker. And we now have the resolution as amended to be voted on. Jimmy, with your permission, all those in favor, and then I'll read it. All those please signify, please. And it passes unanimously, Mary, and I will now read the resolution if I can find it. A resolution by Kershaw County Council expressing its displeasure with the South Carolina DOT road project affecting US 1 in Lugoff. Whereas US 1 in Lugoff, beginning near US Highway 601 overpass and as the highway continues over the Wateree River, is a divided highway and serves as the main thoroughfare for vehicular traffic. And whereas US Highway 1 provides access to various businesses, numerous businesses in Lugoff that provide goods and services, creates jobs, and increases the tax revenue of the county. Whereas due to the design of US Highway 1, access to the businesses located along this highway often requires drivers to utilize cut-throughs that allow vehicles to cross over traffic. And whereas these cut-throughs not only provide direct access to businesses, but also allow vehicles to perform legal U-turns to continue their travels. And whereas there were 19 cut-throughs that allowed for free-flow traffic in Lugoff, and whereas the South Carolina DOT recently completed a road construction project that greatly reduced the number of cut-throughs along the highway in Lugoff, and whereas the reduced numbers of cut-throughs along Highway 1 in Lugoff has impacted traffic flow such that it is more difficult for customers to access local businesses, and whereas the inability of customers to readily access businesses along the highway could also have a negative impact on the business's viability and impact Kershaw County tax revenue, and whereas the reduction of cut-throughs could also lead to increased traffic problems that affect the safety and welfare of our citizens, and whereas the DOT has failed to reach out to Kershaw County prior to the construction project, reducing the number of cut-throughs along US Highway 1, and whereas the Department of Transportation failed to reach out to the businesses along the highway as well as local citizens to receive feedback and inform the public of this project, and to discuss potential impacts and drawbacks to the reduction of the number of cut-throughs along Highway 1 in Lugoff. Now, therefore, be it resolved by Kershaw County Council that Kershaw County Council express its displeasure and disappointment with the Department of Transportation for failure to work with and involve Kershaw County, its citizens and businesses along Highway 1 in Lugoff in the planning process of the road construction that greatly reduced the number of cut-throughs along US 1 and which impacted the ability of consumers to access businesses and could lead to lost revenues for these businesses and might reduce tax revenue for Kershaw County and potentially create unsafe traffic conditions for drivers along US Highway 1 in Lugoff, resolved by this county council on this 8th day of October. Thank you, Jimmy, and thank you, Sammy, for the complete here. And Mr. Conley, thank you for coming. So it is now a matter of record. We move now to the next item on the agenda, which is about some new business, a resolution committing to negotiate a fee in lieu between Kershaw County and Midlands Regional Rehab Hospital at tab F. Mr. Carpenter, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, you may recall some months ago a named company came to the county to purchase land in the Watery Business Park outside of Elgin. This county sold them that land. The company is now ready to begin moving forward with the project. Midlands Rehabilitation Hospital, which will be a 40-bed hospital serving outpatient surgery for orthopedic issues. It'll have 113 employees, and they are coming to the county seeking a fee in lieu agreement.
Thank you. Can we have a motion to approve this fee in lieu agreement for new business?
Make the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Tucker, a second?
Second.
Second. Thank you, Mr. Snodgrass. Discussion? A little later on, gentlemen, we'll be addressing an ordinance on this regard for a first reading in the normal process leading up to 3 readings. No discussion. It looks like a very popular a resolution. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And it's unanimous. Thank you very much. The next item under resolutions is a resolution in memory of Mrs. Emily Clyburn. It's at tab G. Let me read that, and then we'll entertain a motion. In loving memory of Mrs. Emily Clyburn, wife of 58 years to U.S. Congressman James Clyburn, we are today comforted by the words of our Lord in Revelations, and it says, and God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. Therefore be it resolved that we as a community will mourn with the family and honor the legacy of Mrs. Emily Clyburn, and that we embrace and mourn with the family because all of us share a common bond. And therefore, let it be known that we can't replace Mrs. Clyburn, but we will attempt to improve our lives and live our lives as demonstrated by her great example. Now, therefore, let it be known that we know the deep loss and sorrow the family is experiencing. We want to share in that sorrow, but recognize that the Lord has accepted into his presence a good and faithful servant. We'll now take a motion. Mr. Tucker.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we accept this resolution in memory of Miss Emily Clyburn.
Yeah, second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Discussion, Mr. Tucker.
I just want to say that I think some of you for the first time actually got a chance to meet him today in person at the awards thing there for the Historic Camden presentation that went on. I wasn't there today, but this family is a very humble, Christian, serving family, and she was too. She was an educator, and if you knew her or had the opportunity to meet her, you would love her. And I think Congressman Clyburn is doing good. I talked to his family last weekend, and he's handling things very well in the kids, but she's going to be dearly missed.
Yeah, absolutely. Other discussion?
I just want to add, it's
Mr. Snodgrass, go ahead.
It's an honor for us to do this. The Clyburns, we have a Camden connection. As Mr. Clyburn's parents were from here, and then he went to Mather Academy and graduated from there as well.
Right. Some of them moved to Sumter, and some of them stayed here.
Yeah.
Very good. Other comments? Indeed, many of us saw her today, and I see the Chronicle here and WPUB, and they will record that the man didn't shrink from his duties today at a presentation of great value to our county with standing up some additional funds and resources to support our Revolutionary War Park and others that are currently in the process of being built. He's a kind, gentle, and graceful man, and I will tell you that in my time as chairman, he would always take a call from me, a cold call. That's an amazing man, and you have to recognize him. He is the number 2 person in the House of Representatives of the greatest nation in the world.
Amen.
And I'd like to see him move on up. Boy, what a great man he is. And it's been told, he's our own. He belongs to us. Mr. Jones, I thank you for your second. Do you have any comments, sir?
Yes, I do. I would like to say that even though I don't agree with any of his politics whatsoever, I worked alongside his cousin, Wilson Clyburn, when we were young officers at the city PD, City of Camden. And I can remember how proud Wilson was whenever he was elected to Congress. And he is a decent man, has a wonderful family. I just don't agree with his politics. However, I think this is a good thing for us to do. And I support this resolution. Thank you for bringing it forward to us, Mr. Tucker.
Other comments? With that, we're ready to vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Thank you very much. And Mary, if you'd carry that forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor.
Now we move into a series of ordinances. The first one is item H, and it's on the screen. Third reading of an ordinance authorizing the conveyance of the Bethune rural water property. We just had a public hearing on it. Mr. Carpenter.
Mr.
Please.
Chairman, members of council, you previously voted first and second reading unanimously. The gist of this is 40 years ago, a loan was received by Bethune Rural Water Company to build a pump station and upgrades to their system. It included 1/3 of an acre of land that Kershaw County owned and leased to them. With the loan being paid off, Kershaw County will be donating that land, signing it over to Bethune Rural Water.
Very good. Can we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Mr. Gardner, thank you. Second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Snodgrass. Discussion. We can move to a vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And it's unanimous, and thank you, Tommy and Mr. DeBose when he gets back. Well done. The second item in a series of ordinances is a second reading of an ordinance authorizing, an agreement for Philo and on Project Sweeper. It's at tab I. Mr. Carpenter, please.
I'll let Ms. Morgan speak.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, members of council, what you have before you is an ordinance authorizing the approval and execution of a fee in lieu of tax agreement with a company which is known as Project Sweeper here in Kershaw County. This ordinance provides that the project will enter into a new fee agreement based upon one that was already entered into previously and allow for the development to be entered into a multi-county industrial park, therefore allowing it to continue to accrue all the benefits of the fee in lieu of tax agreement, and also provides that there could be the use of CDBG grant funds in relation to this.
Very good. I think we need to put it into motion here. Can we have a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Was that you,
So
Dave?
moved, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Dave.
Second.
A second from Mr. Connell. Discussion? Questions? Seeing there is none, and we're still under a non-disclosure agreement, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And it's unanimous. We move to item number 3, a second reading of an ordinance authorizing, again, an agreement of Philo, Kershaw County, and Project Wildcat. Again, back to you, Mr. Carpenter. It's a tab J, by the way.
Mr. DeBose?
Mr. DeBose. Come on, Mr.
Twice.
Carpenter. You're on those
I've been
pain
called
pills.
worse, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of council, what you have before you again is another ordinance allowing for the approval of a fee in lieu of tax agreement with a company that's currently identified as Project Wildcat, which is planning to expand operations here in Kershaw County. And this would allow for the fee in lieu of tax agreement to be executed and go forward.
Very good. Can we have a motion to approve?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Tucker, and a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ben. With that, any discussion?
Was that Ben or Gardner?
Huh?
Okay.
Mr. Connell, you're right.
Thank you.
All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And again, it's unanimous. Mary, I keep looking over here at Danny.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Before you move on, I just want to state on both of this ordinance that these names will be revealed on third reading because they have to, just for public knowledge.
That's correct. Thank
And
you
I'll
very
have
much.
comments on third reading. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm sure we all will. Item number 4 is at tab K, and on the screen again, first reading of an ordinance by Kershaw County, the designation of 13 acres of tax parcels to be redesignated from R15 to R2. Help us out here, Vic, and we may need Mike Conley. Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, you have in front of you tonight on first reading a request to rezone a parcel of approximately 13 acres of land located on Old Stagecoach Road in the eastern part of Kershaw County from R15 to RD2. This has previously been voted upon and approved by the Planning Commission, though it was not a unanimous vote.
All right, very good. Can we have a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve.
Mr. Tucker, and a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Gardner. Any discussion? Would this allow the movement of mobile homes into this area?
Yes, sir, it would.
All right. And as I understand it, was not unanimous on the planning board.
It was a 4-2 vote.
4-2 vote.
What did you say, Mr. Chairman? I couldn't hear you.
Was it unanimous? And it was and the answer was it was a 4-2 vote by the planning board.
To allow. You said disallow.
allow.
Did you say, okay, I thought you said disallow.
No, I
I
didn't.
apologize.
Thank you for that clarification. Yeah, David.
Yeah, just a couple of questions for staff, whether it be Vic or Mike. So what type of modular, because I think this is probably the big sticking point here with this rezoning is it would allow a modular home to be placed on this property. So do we know exactly what type of modular home that we're looking at? I know we've discussed this, but for public record.
Yeah, the applicant is proposing a double wide. Some people call them mobile homes, but under our definition of mobile homes, it's a manufactured home.
Okay.
A manufactured home in our ordinance is anything older than a 1976, which follows under the International Building Code.
Okay. And are there any kind of requirements as far as underpinning how they're set up?
Yes, all mobile homes in our county are required underpinning and.
They could be vinyl or brick, or is there a?
Correct.
Other discussion? Yeah, Sammy?
I
I'm sorry.
wasn't done,
Sammy,
but
go ahead.
okay.
I yield. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just one more question. And so, would this allow multiple modulars to be placed on this property, you think? Would that be something that would happen in the future, or is it just a single?
It's family land at this time. They actually live on the lot next, the larger lot. Their intention is the smaller lot. There is an accessory structure, a barn that sits on that property. They were going to put the mobile home on that particular lot. The property to the right, all the forested land to the right is RD2. Everything to the left is R15. So in order to get the smaller lot, they have to annex, or they have to rezone their larger lot and the smaller lot together to be contiguous to that RD2 zoning. They would have to go through the subdivisions. I can't say it's not, because once you rezone it to that, they can do whatever is permitted under that use. But from our understanding, the intent of this is just to put a family mobile home on the lot that has the accessory house or barn on it.
Okay. That helps me. And this is one that I've kind of mulled over, and just for the simple fact that it's surrounded by R15, and it is so. What to the right of that is obviously the Pickett Thomas Park, and that's RD2, and that's kind of the line. And of course, if we approve this, then the RD2 line comes either further in east or towards town.
Sure.
Or
it would
west,
have to
yeah.
come before
Thank you.
this board, but yes,
Yeah.
it does move to the east. Other way.
And then, but at the same time, on that side of Stagecoach, there are multiple mobile homes that are on that side of Stagecoach already.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct? Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Tucker.
Thank you. I think Councilman Snodgrass kind of touched on this. Our restrictions over the years, I know since I've been here, is really tightened compared to other counties when it comes down to mobile homes. And like you said, that stuff that's outdated can't be relocated in this county and the underpinning and stuff that's required. So it doesn't look like a landfill where we just dumped a bunch of mobile homes. But with that being said, how far is this from Valley Park?
How far? Probably a quarter mile down the road, maybe.
And that's a housing development over there.
Yes, sir, on the other side of the street.
And the reason why I'm asking these questions is because this is actually my district. And these folks are trying to do something and giving up, rezoning their property so they could be able to live. And this county doesn't offer a lot for affordable housing. And in some means, this is a way of people having a decent home. And I am for this tonight, and I know there's folks further down the road in the subdivision where they live may not want to see it, but you can't take and bulldoze the rest of the mobile homes that won't be nowhere near as nice as this marginal home that's going up. And we can't dictate or demand what people do with their land in the future. We can only govern in the present when it comes down to people's property. I hear this body often talks about not wanting to take people's rights away for their property. And I'm going to support the Planning Commission on their recommendation, which was not unanimous, but it was majority.
Mr. Bozard.
Yes, Mr. Connor. Was anybody talking against it?
There was one individual who came out and questioned it. He didn't necessarily come out, but he did question, and he owned property, I think, further down the road on the other side. But he did come in and ask some questions and was curious of it, for sure.
And this property is going to be divided up, surveyed out into different lots and everything, is that understanding?
No, sir, it's going to stay the way it is, from our understanding. And it can't be a mobile home park. It's not zoned properly for a mobile home park. From our understanding, the property will stay the way it is, and it'll stay with the family at this particular time.
So it's going to be a single family?
Well, the family, the elders have the house on the larger lot, and from my understanding, it will go to a family member to have the mobile home on the lot next door.
Okay, thank you.
Other discussion? Let's move forward to a vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. We have Mr. Snodgrass, Mr. Tucker, Mr. Gardner, Mr. Bozard, and Mr. Connell. All those opposed, raise your hands. It's me and Mr. Jones. The motion passes on first reading. We move to the next item, which is another ordinance, first reading of an ordinance to amend the county's official zoning map. Again, Mr. Carpenter, I'll allow you to open this one up, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the council, you have in front of you tonight for first reading a request to rezone a piece of property, approximately 14 acres again, this time on US 1 North, from its current zoning of GD, General Development, to a new zoning of RD1. I'm sorry, it is currently GD and RD1. They're proposing rezoning it to RD2. It has already passed the Planning Commission, but again, it was not a unanimous vote.
Very good. Can we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Snodgrass. A second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Tucker. Discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I'm David. Go right ahead.
Yeah, so just for discussion, this was a little bit different for me as I was studying this. I found myself, Michael, maybe I'm ready for a job with you and Joey in the planning office. I've been was reading up on all this good stuff. This was a little bit different for me because everything that's around there is already zoned that way. When you go in that part of town, or that part of the county, it's already a county that there's a lot of modular home use around there. It's right across the street from Shepherd Acres, and everything around there is consistent. So obviously changing this zoning would actually bring some consistency to this, as well as the staff in their report and in their recommendation. They say that it is consistent with our future use map, and so this is one that's a little bit easier for me.
Very good. Other comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go
Can I
ahead.
ask Mr. Connolly, what was the vote from the commission?
I think this one was unanimous.
It was 5-1.
5-1.
5-1.
Ms.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right, no more further discussion. With that, we move forward to a vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Mr. Snodgrass, Mr. Tucker, Mr. Gardner, Mr. Bozard, and Mr. Connell. All those opposed, that would be Mr. Burns and Mr. Jones, and it passes. And we move to the next item on the agenda, which is another ad valorem situation, and item number 6. And I think we have it on the board. Item number 6 is a first reading in title only, and so it's only title, and so we didn't have it on the board. Carolina Midlands Regional Rehab Hospital, the one we've already voted on for a resolution. Mr. Carpenter, bring us up, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, this is the first reading of the fee in lieu agreement ordinance that would affect the previously mentioned Midlands Regional Rehabilitation Hospital.
Okay, very good. Can we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion we approve.
Mr. Tucker, a second?
Second.
Second for Mr. Snodgrass. Discussion.
I just want to say, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think this is a great thing when they get this built out, and we'll be able to have some more beds and heads. Hopefully, we don't need them, but if we do, we got a place to put them and not transport them across the county line or down to Florence.
This one's had several names, hadn't it? Ernest Health and a few others. But this is new business in one of our industrial parks. Well done. Other discussion? There isn't any, and this is terrific news. We'll go on to a second reading if this passes. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And it's unanimous, Mary, and passes. We move now to new business. The first item is item number 1. It's a codification update. Ben, I'll let you introduce this, sir. Mr. Connell.
Yes, sir. This is just a general update, won't require a vote. Before I hand it over to Tommy for further update, for council's recollection, we budgeted the funds for codification for the public. This is an effort to be more transparent with the laws that apply in Kershaw County. We've identified a vendor, and I understand they're either working on it or starting to work on it. What we seek to know is a completion date, and this, I believe, is going to deliver a searchable format. So any code law or anything else that applies to you or your property in Kershaw County, you'll be able to look it up, find it more quickly, more easily, and then all of it will be available online. Really important to us up here, and me in particular, as I used to represent folks in dealing with the county prior to being on council, one of the frustrations was, well, which laws apply, and people just couldn't find it easily, or you had to pay a fair amount of money to come and spend a little bit of time with Mary or someone else who would print everything off, and you paid to receive your own code that applied to you. Mr. Morgan, could you give us further update, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Cornell, members of council. What you have before you tonight is just a brief status update as it relates to the codification process and the project that we were doing here in Kershaw County. Mr. Cornell noted we do not, as a county, have the county ordinances posted online. They have not been codified since 2008. Codification is nothing more than a fancy legal term that basically says it takes the ordinances that council passes and puts them into a format that allows for like a book or code of laws, so that way the citizens can see what ordinances apply to them, be it animal control, so on and so forth. The county previously used MuniCode, which is the vendor that you'll see on the screen before you tonight. They stopped having these ordinances codified back in June of 2008. Now, the good thing about MuniCode is that Kershaw County is still in their system. And so what that allows for is that it allows for the templates and everything that's already in there, so you don't, as a vendor, have to reinvent the wheel, meaning that's a cost savings to the citizens of Kershaw County. So what they can do, and this is one way, we're going to have the idea is to have a link from the Kershaw County website that would go to the actual codification on the page specifically for Kershaw County. There's also the ability for the citizens just to go directly to MuniCode, and that's what we have on the screen here. So if Danny will show the next slide, what will happen is you can go through and using the very top tab where it says Code Library, theoretically you can look at the Code of Ordinances for pretty much any state in the union. All 50 states are represented, and you'll see South Carolina there. Next slide. When you click on the South Carolina page there, you can, this is just the very beginning or the top of the screen, which shows that a lot of other counties and municipalities here in South Carolina utilize MuniCode. It would be a rough estimate to say that approximately 80% of the municipalities in the state of South Carolina use MuniCode, so they are the leader. You have highlighted on the screen before you Beaufort County. And the reason why that is the county that is highlighted is they've got, based upon our research, probably the best system and documentation and how it's presented. And so that would be what I would suggest that we use as a template document or a template county. Next slide. Once you click on that, and the idea that this would be specific as to Kershaw County, but you can see in the top left-hand corner, there is a little bit of a logo or symbol indicating that it is Beaufort County, but it's broken down into 3 main sections. You have the Code of Ordinances, broken out separately and distinct in Beaufort, what they call their Community Development Code, or the Zoning and Land Development Regulations here in Kershaw County. And then also you'll see underneath there's something called documents called Muni Docs. And we'll go through each one of these kind of tabs for you here momentarily. Next slide. If you were, as a citizen, to click on the Code of Ordinances, this is kind of like an example of the page that you would see. On the left-hand side, it breaks down and it puts into the order each of the ordinances and as it relates to the various sections of the county. In this instance, they've got administration, airports, animals, businesses, etc. So all the ordinances that have previously been passed that have been codified that basically say this is the animal control ordinance, and the various sections would be underneath a tab, and then it would break it down and you could click on individual links, section 3-1, section 3-2, so on and so forth. Again, as Mr. Connell pointed out, that allows for any citizen to go online at any point in time and look and see, for example, what the animal control ordinance is, what the language is, and the regulations that apply to animals in Kershaw County. Also, you'll see on the screen there that you'll have something that says it's adopted ordinances not yet codified. So what happens is that allows for pretty much almost real time, within the next day, an ordinance that is passed upon third reading and signed by Kershaw County, that would automatically, pretty much, once it is scanned in PDF form, there's a means by which you basically email it to them. They upload it, and so you can have almost within 24 to 48 hours access for the citizens to be able to read what the ordinances are. Codification is a process that happens typically twice a year, where they'll take those ordinances and the ones that apply, that go into, for example, emergency services, fire protection, they would be put in those particular sections. But this would allow for, again, pretty much instantaneous ability to search and view those documents. Next slide. I think we skip one. Well, and Dan, if you'll go back just quickly, I think it's 2 slides. If you look here, and again, Beaufort has it broken out separately, given that planning and zoning is such an integral part of the future development of Kershaw County, they have that broken out. So what that does is it allows, on their own, you can go and see that specific section much quicker and much easier. And a lot of times, and we could potentially work through, I know Mr. Conley, his department, have a lot of the permitting and information that's available online. There may be a way to merge some of those documents and allow that to be put in there as well. So again, allowing the citizens to be able to see that. Dan, if you'll go forward 2 slides. What you have here, and I think this is probably, quite frankly, the best tool that we've got, is a subsection that's entitled Muni Docs. And what that is it allows for all of the documents, be it the agendas, be it the minutes, if they're council committee meetings, you can put committee meeting minutes, so on and so forth, all that information up there. And so you can see Beaufort County right now has theirs all the way back to 2001, all of the county council minutes, so anybody can go back and look at it. But as Mr. Connell noted, that it's important to be able to search these things, because it's one thing to have these documents available online, but unless you have them in searchable format, it could take you quite some time. So what MuniCode does, and Dan, if you'll put the next slide up, they basically make all of these documents searchable. So we did an example. And so we put in impact fee in the search field. And you will see there are 756 results that show where that term impact fee has been used. And it's in minutes. It'll allow for it to be references in the code section. It'll be allowed for references in the standalone ordinances. Pretty much that would allow the citizens, so for example, if they wanted to prepare a public comment, be able to come for you and speak intelligently on an issue, they can say, well, obviously this has been brought before council before, but it's still important and this is another reason why. So as Mr. Connell pointed out, it's true interest of transparency. It allows the citizens to be able to go in and look and see what their government's doing, and it makes the council's job a little bit easier too, because they can go back and use that search functionality as well. So that is a really neat tool. Like all tools, it costs money. We've been able to work with the vendor so far and get some type of pricing discounts, basically saying first year's free, so on and so forth. So that leads to the two big main questions I think is probably on everybody's mind. How much longer is this going to take, and what is the cost going to be? So what we have done is I've worked with Mr. Templer, and the county is reaching out to Central Carolina to be able to bring some folks from Central Carolina up to assist the county in a project, so that way the scanning of these documents can begin, because these documents have not been scanned in and sent anywhere since 2008. Now, I can tell you the vendor would be more than happy to provide their people to come up here and scan those documents for us, but it'd be more expensive. So that's one thing that the county's trying to do to limit costs. Going back to how much time it will take, however, we're estimating that once we get all the documents scanned in, it should be anywhere from about an 8 to 9 month process to allow their legal editors to review everything and to make sure that everything that has happened in sequential order, something that was done in 2008, subsequently modified in 2010, is put in the right order and put in the right place so we have the right code available. The ultimate final price will probably be in a better position once we get everything scanned, sent over to them to sit there and say, okay, this is what the price will be. There will be just like anything else, an infrastructure cost up front, which will be large, and then there'll be an annual maintenance, which will be much smaller, because the work at that point in time will pretty much be fully automated. I'll answer any questions you may have at this time.
Ben, over to you, sir.
I would just say knowledge is power, and I think this is an important step to having the government operate more openly. And after this gets up and running and people are familiar with it, I think it'll probably be used not as much, but probably close to as much as the GIS system, which people love, getting online and finding out about the property and prior owners and just understanding it. It opens up the information that way. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Other comments?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, please. Mr. Bozard, please.
What cost is involved in this?
Again, we don't know specifically what the final outcome is going to be, or the final cost is going to be.
Buford couldn't tell you? Oh, no.
Well, Buford's is a little bit different, because I don't know how long, because again, we're going back and reinventing and taking in data that's 11 years old and having to rebuild the entire encyclopedia of information. Right. So that's the initial upfront larger cost, I believe. And Mr. Carpenter, correct me if I'm wrong, we've budgeted $30,000 in this budget. Right. So it'll be significant. Going forward, it'll be much less. And a lot of that, again, depends on the amount of ordinances. Kershaw County does not pass near as many as Beaufort or other counties, and so the cost to upgrade and keep it current is much lower as opposed to a much busier county.
Okay. Other comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Ben.
And I believe that budgeted amount was based off of asking for comps at the time from other counties. So it wasn't just a number picked out of the air. That was something that we thought would get close to getting it done, and then we'd have the recurring subscription or service cost.
That is correct.
Yep. Ben, I'm sorry, Jimmy, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of County Council. Two comments. One, I just want to thank Mr. Connell and thank you, Tommy, for the hard work in this. I think this is long overdue, and it seems like you guys have got it under control. And of course, going back to the cost, procurement's always going to be in play.
Yes, sir. Very much so.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Other comments? Yeah, I've got a few to pass on later, but we don't want to hold these gentlemen up. Well done. Thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to the next item, which is a Clean Community Commission appointment. We thank Mr. Outlaw, who is leaving from the town of Bethune, and there's an appointment in your package. If you'll scroll down to the next one, Danny. And Miss Christy Gardner. Can we get a motion, perhaps from Mr. Gardner? Sir.
Sir, I'd move that we add Christy Gardner, we are not related, to the Clean Community Commission.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. And any discussion? Only that the 2nd of November, the Clean Community is added again, and I'd love to make sure our friends in the media would help us get that advertised. Volunteers are being taken. Wanda Swan's hard at work, all that team. and it's just going to be great. Last time was a home run. With that, we move to a vote. All those in favor, so signify. And it passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Gardner. We move now to item number 3, County Council meeting times. Jimmy, would you open this one up?
I sure will, Mr. Chairman and members of council. Thank you for the time. I'd like to start by making a motion to add a second meeting to our monthly meetings.
Okay, well, I'll have to overrule. You know that, Jimmy, so you can't do that.
No, sir. I call a point of order. Can I get a legal opinion on that?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Jones, as I understand it, you are making a motion because currently the current council agenda and calendar has one meeting on it per month.
Correct.
Is that correct? And you are asking that the motion add a second meeting to that meetings. And I understand the chairman's point, saying that there was previously a motion that was directed on point as to this, and Mr. Jones and Mr. Snodgrass were on the losing side of that motion. I've looked at the minutes from the August 13th meeting, and I note from the minutes it indicates that Councilman Gardner moved to approve the cancellation of the September 24th, October 22nd, and November 26th meetings. So as I read that motion, that is the removal of meetings from the agenda going forward. As I understand your motion, you're actually adding meetings to be put back. Understanding the chairman's concern that it's basically kind of looking at the issue from the opposite side, two sides of the same coin, but as it's voiced in this instance, because it's also beyond that next meeting, so it wouldn't be considered a motion to reconsider. That's what I think Mr. Snodgrass was alluding to earlier in his comments. I mean, it would seem to me that this is a new motion, although it's retreading similar ground, and that's up to the chairman to make that determination. As I understand your motion is to add another meeting.
My motion is a valid motion. It is. It is not a motion to remove a meeting. It's a motion to add a meeting. There is a difference. That's not the same motion.
In effect, they are the same thing. There's 24 hours in a day, and my ruling as a parliamentarian here, we can take the legal advice, but the chairman is the parliamentarian, and then I overrule that.
So you're not going to let my motion go forward, even though I got a legal opinion that it was a correct motion?
I didn't hear that as a correct motion. He made an interpretation.
Mr. Tommy?
Yes, sir.
Once again, I want to ask you, the motion to add a meeting, is that the same as a motion to dismiss a meeting?
In a hyper-technical sense, no, sir, I do not. It's my opinion it is not the same because it's adding versus subtracting.
So therefore,
understanding the chairman's concern as a senior parliamentarian that this is basically reaching the same result by using a contrapositive, I understand all of that as well. And that's why, obviously, it's the chairman's call on that.
Well, I can tell you this. I think it's a sad day in Kershaw County when we're sitting here and we're losing jobs and we're falling behind on economic development, and we cut our meetings down to one meeting a month, which has never been done in the history of Kershaw County. I think that's an injustice to the people of Kershaw County.
Mr. Jones,
I don't think it's fair
we need to make the
for
motion.
the folks in Kershaw County.
The motion has not been accepted, so you can talk when we get to the next part, which would be the council briefs, okay?
Point of order?
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Mr. Tommy, so can we get an interpretation on the motion to reconsider ruling, which says that you cannot reconsider on the same meeting or the meeting immediately following, but this is not, correct?
This is not. I would not interpret Mr. Jones's motion as a motion to reconsider because it is made after the time period that Kershaw County Council has historically accepted that motion to reconsider either the same meeting or the immediately following meeting.
Mr. Snodgrass has that.
But even if it was a motion to reconsider, which is not, but if it was, we are outside those time constraints.
That's correct.
Okay.
No, we don't. Because we're trying to do a parliamentarian issue, Al. That's a good point. Okay, I'll go ahead, please. Anything further?
So my motion stands to add a second meeting to our monthly meetings for Kershaw County.
No, it does not.
I just said it did, but you say it doesn't. So
No, it doesn't.
I have a question.
Mr. Tucker.
This is the type stuff that I think we get caught up in. And there's so much more important things we can be doing. So my question is this, Mr. Tommy, if our rules stated that if you're not on the prevailing end, and you have to allow a year in between before you can bring back up a subject, or 6 months or whatever, that would be the case tonight, regardless what reconsidering want to do for parliamentary procedures or whatever, because our rules are our rules which override, if we want to go by the Robbins Rules of Order, because we have to go by our rules that we set for ourselves.
That is correct. The rules would
Okay.
govern. Yes,
Right.
sir.
Right. Okay. So maybe we need to revisit our rules.
Mr. Chairman?
I do want to make a clarification, and I'll go to you, Ben, it's possible if we don't interpret the rules of how we operate as a team, there'll never be a decision made. And we will revisit and revisit and revisit by some turn of the phrase or some other reading. And when we last met, it was very clear on our motion to remove the meeting in October and November that there was always room for a call meeting if there needed to be one. All right, so it's not like we're not going to meet, but if there was an urgent need, we could meet. And then we could have a call meeting. Okay, Ben, go ahead, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Morgan let me know if I'm going too abroad of the point of order, which I was just going to comment on Mr. Snodgrass's point. Sometimes we can practically or technically be right, but in the form of government where we encourage free speech, perceived suppression, even if it's not really that, can be viewed as a harm or as someone concealing something. And I would rather just discuss the thing, vote on it, and let the votes lie where they may. I don't think after this particular vote, if it comes up at this meeting or next meeting, that there will be any more wiggle room for interpretation. I personally am in favor of roughly what we have now is 6 months that we're kind of testing, where we, during the budget cycle, have additional meetings, 2 during the month, and now we're testing 1 during the month. I haven't heard any complaints about it so far, but that would be my preference.
Well, the other thing that, just since this is a broad discussion, is trying to move forward with, business is the issue here. It's not a matter of one side or the other prevailing. It's trying to get the job done. And if we had to reopen the budget, that would be another example of reopening. So we've had these rules that, at least in the interpretation I had from Ken DeBose when I talked to him about this issue, is different than yours, Tommy, but, and that's why you need a parliamentarian, and it kind of falls to me to do that. And I'd be happy to take advice. But here we are, and time is important. But the best advice I had as your chairman, it's not real fun up here, is don't let the process become the issue. And that's where we are. Okay? And that's where we are. The process is becoming the issue, and everybody's got a different view of what Robert said and all that sort of thing. But I'm certainly willing to be overruled here as the chairman. I'm ready to go forward. If you want to vote on it again, I bet you I can tell you what the outcome will be. But we'll spend another hour arguing over these things. If that is the will here, I'm not going to ask for a vote, but I do want to do what the gentlemen up here say.
Well, my motion stands on the floor.
Exactly. I got that, Jimmy, and I think I'm giving it full consideration.
I'll second it.
We got a second. And I'll accept the second, but I'll let you know, as a parliamentarian, we'll not revisit these things like this. And I will ask the lawyers to go back in and look at what the laws say. But as a team, is what Mr. Tucker said, the greater part of wisdom here is, how do we want to run it? Robert's Rules of Order is not a verbatim requirement for us, in no fashion, shape, or color. If it was, we'd have a lot different discussions up here, and it wouldn't be free-flowing, okay? But as your chairman, my interest is none other than to have the process not be standing in the way. I must say, though, that it looks like it might, and so I've accepted a second. And we have the motion, so I'll call the vote.
Mr. Chairman?
No, there's got to be discussion on any debatable item, Mr. Chairman. I call the point of
Fine. If
order.
you'd like to debate, sure, Jimmy, go ahead.
Well, or discuss.
Go ahead.
Some comments.
Go right
So
ahead.
we're not calling for the vote yet.
Yeah, go ahead, if you'd like.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the County Council, for your time. I am making a motion for Kershaw County Council to return to having 2 meetings a month instead of just 1 meeting a month for several reasons. First, I think it is important that we allow our citizens to have a voice in their government. Eliminating the second meeting of the month reduces their ability to speak their minds to council. Second, there is much work to be done for Kershaw County. By going to only 1 meeting a month, we might give people the impression that we are giving up on our county when we should be rolling up our sleeves and working harder to make Kershaw County the best place for our citizens to work, live, and raise a family. Finally, given our lack of success in economic development in Kershaw County, we should have 2 meetings a month so we can, or as a council, can work harder on bringing investment and good-paying jobs to Kershaw County. If we only have 1 meeting a month, it will take longer for economic development projects such as fee in lieu of taxes to have a final vote. That could potentially cost an industry to select Kershaw County to select a county that could possibly work faster than Kershaw County. Given all that needs to be done, we as a council should not be removing meetings. Instead, we need to be considering adding more meetings to make sure we are doing all we can do for our citizens. And that is the reason why I am asking that we have a second meeting a month. We're not reopening the budget on this, and I understand that we talk about we can have a called meeting, but let me tell you about called meetings. You rarely have all 7 of us here. You have to hope you're going to get 4 people in. And what could take us 3 months to do, we could do in 6 weeks, half the time. I just think it was a bad decision on this council to go to 1 meeting a month. And I greatly appreciate, Mr. Chairman, you letting this vote come to on the floor tonight. And that concludes my remarks.
Other comments? Mr. Tucker.
First of all, I think these decisions were made to go to 1 meeting a month for the remainder of the year before we had our economic development director to announce that she was leaving. So with that being said, they don't even tie together. That's a situation that's happened. People move on. Our situation, majority thought that it would be in the best interest of time for staff and others that we go to the meetings once a month, and if something come up, we would do a call meeting. My problem is I've sat up here and lost a lot of votes, but I've never brought anything back and a play on words. And I'm just going to tell you, Tommy, we can play with words all day. We're all pretty intelligent, but that means the same exact thing as Councilman Jones getting 2 bites at the apple. And that's unacceptable. And I'm going to vote against it tonight for the simple fact that's not how I want to govern, and that's not how we have governed. It is not the correct way to govern. And I will tell all of you up here, and you can vote it up or vote it down, it don't make me a bit of difference. I will be addressing some of these things in our policies. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Mr. Jones.
If I could, please, thank you. First off, I don't think I'm getting 2 bites of any apple. Bottom line is, nobody discussed with me that they were going to take a meeting away. It was on the agenda. It was brought up. No one had talked to me, said anything to me about it. It just happened. And I have no problem being outvoted twice in a row or being voted up twice in a row. I have no problems with that. Hold on. I know you want to say something. Just relax. But bottom line is, folks, this is the right thing for this county to do. I just can't believe that this council can sit up here in good faith and go to 1 meeting a month. It just mystifies me. I can't even comprehend how we can even think that is a good idea at this point in time. Thank you, Mr. Tucker.
Mr. Tucker.
Yeah, thank you. And that's part of my problem. Why do I have to vote against something twice? Why do I have to vote against something twice that's already lost?
Why would you care? Why does
Because
it bother
I
you?
do care. Number one, I don't want to waste my time. And number two, you're on the losing end. Why are we even discussing this? I just, for the love of God, I don't understand
I don't
tonight.
consider me losing
All right,
up here.
Mr. Jones, you don't have the floor. Please go ahead, Mr.
Thank you,
Jones.
Mr. Chairman.
So now the ones that choose to vote against this tonight will get blamed once again. Limited government, not giving people to the access to the government. You know, the whole show starts over again. Now y'all can believe me or not, but you'll read it. It's coming. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I think, Mr. Connell, go right ahead,
Mr.
please,
Chairman.
sir.
Yes, sir. So, under our current performance this year, we've only had one meeting a month for a portion of the year, so it's not the entire year. And I think everybody, at least my perception is next year, I'd hope that we would have multiple meetings per month during the budget cycle when we're having all these sessions and doing the large majority of the work of the council. I think there's a fundamental disagreement on how government can be effective. I generally disfavor government meetings. I don't think more of them equals more effective government necessarily. And I think that Kershaw County overall has been performing well in several areas of the county. And it's not due to additional meetings. There's no ratio there. I think that's a false analogy to draw. And personally, I haven't received any complaints. I've asked several community leaders, folks in the community, do they have any preference? What do they care? And haven't heard any complaints on this issue at all. So I think we're okay at one meeting per month for the portion of the year in which we tend to have vacations and other holidays coming up as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, any further discussion? All right, I call the question. All those in favor of Mr. Jones' motion?
State the motion again.
And restate the motion, Mr. Jones, thank you.
The motion was to have a second meeting in our monthly schedule.
Okay. All those in favor of Mr. Jones' motion signify by raising your hand. We have Mr. Snodgrass and Mr. Jones. All those opposed signify by raising your hand. And it's Mr. Connell, Mr. Bozard, Mr. Burns, and Mr. Tucker, and Mr. Gardner, and the motion fails.
Thank you,
All right,
members
we
of
move
council.
now to the next item on the agenda. If you put it back up, I got to go through all my paper. Is council briefing, starting with Mr. Gardner.
Yes. Just want to thank colleagues and staff and constituents for the prayers and cards and calls during my most recent hospital visit. Means a lot to me to get those things. I really appreciate it. And 3 in the last 9 months, and I'm trying to end that right here. Hopefully there aren't going to be any more. But quickly, I want to give a shout out to Kershaw Health.
Yeah.
I spent 7 wonderful days over there, 4 in ICU, and I could not have gotten better service anywhere in the world. I'm going to tell you, they were fabulous. Doctors, nurses, support staff, everybody. It gets a bad rap sometime, but I'm going to tell you, they were absolutely wonderful to me. Possibly saved my life. I don't know. I was pretty sick for a few days. And little did I know a few years ago when we voted to lease that, to save that hospital, that one day it would save me. But I'll tell you, it is a wonderful thing to have Kershaw Health in our community.
Amen.
Our people are very fortunate to have it, and I just wanted them to know publicly how much I appreciate it. Thank you.
Ms. Bozard.
Thank you very much. Went out to the Touch a Truck. And amazing how we can get so many people together out there on that property. It was 1,442, and I'm sure Mr. Carpenter is going to elaborate on this a little bit during his time, but I was very much surprised to see all those folks out there. Now, I have suggested we have a car show, and Mr. Carpenter tells me he's already looking into that, so that's good. I believe we can add to this and make this a good going thing and get the people out once or twice a year. Right, Mr. Carpenter? I read with interest in the paper what the sheriff had to say and so forth, and I don't know whether you got it on your agenda about the overcrowded at the jails or not, but how do we stand with that now?
The jail is frequently overcrowded, Mr. Bozard. It's frequently overcrowded.
We don't have a problem? That's good.
Every jail in the state has that problem.
Okay. Thank you very much. I just wanted to, wonder, because I'm reading in the paper, and I don't know if I can always believe what I'm reading in the paper, so, and anyway, thank you. As long as we, on the same lines. Talking about jails, there was an article that I read that over in Darlington County this past weekend, there were 18 inmates baptized, accepted the Lord, and was baptized last weekend. So I think that is great. They put the Bibles and so forth in the school, in the jails, and took them out to schools. If we put them back in the schools, we might not have to worry about them overcrowded jails. So thank you very much.
Ben?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I came back to Kershaw County after having 2 children because I thought it would be the right place to raise my family. And this past weekend just proved that to be true. It's a representation of what you get to experience in Kershaw County. Took my family to the Touch a Truck event, which was awesome. We got to participate in the Hogs for Homers events where we cooked over 200 butts in a 18-hour period through a thunderstorm and raised a bunch of money for Lugoff Elgin baseball. And then we also got to attend Farm Day at Old McCaskill's farm. What variety of recreation, education, and participation in athletics you have in Kershaw County. It's just amazing to me. I'm so pleased to be back in the place where I was born and having my children and their friends experience the good and moral upbringing that you experience here in Kershaw County. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the County Council. I do have a couple of things I want to talk about. One, let me get the good stuff over first. My son was 20 years old today. His mom, my wife, and his girlfriend went to Rock Hill or Winthrop to celebrate with him tonight. And Taylor, if you listen, I love you, buddy. Happy birthday, because I told him to listen. Otherwise, he wouldn't. He is so far from politics, it's unbelievable. But just want to say happy 20th to him. Also, the lady to my left here, her granddaughter is 4 years old today. So Megan's, is it her first, second? It's her second child. Well, happy birthday to her as well. Those are great days, great days. And thirdly, but certainly not meaning to be third, Mr. Gardner, you've been in our prayers. I've been keeping check on you through Mary, and so glad to see you here tonight. I do realize how sick you were and how hard of a issue you had to go through, and glad you're with us tonight. Even though you and I don't agree on anything, glad you were with us tonight. All right. I also I want to say something about somebody else sitting out here in this office, in this council chambers. You know, Linda Franklin Moore is a pioneer in county government and in government, period. She has been so active for so many years, 25, 30 years. I don't know who's counting when you get our age. But I just want to tip my hat to that lady. She is a wonderful lady who has done so much for this community and received nothing except some arguments from time to time. And but I respect you highly. And thank you so much for all you've done within Kershaw County. DOT, I said what I said, I meant what I said, and I hope that never happens again. Also, it was said tonight that on the dealing with the second meeting a month that there's been no complaints filed, but yet Mr. Tucker sat over there and said it's all going to start again. All the hoopla is going to start again. I'm not going to shut up. I'm going to always state my opinion and state how I feel. I don't really care how anyone up here, what they think about it. And so anyway, thank you, gentlemen. That concludes my meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Snodgrass.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, just a few things to highlight. I want to thank Danny and also Cato and his staff at the jail for helping us clean up some parts of Hell Street, or actually majority of Hell Street. I was taking my kids to school one morning and noticed man, someone has decided to dump all their trash on Hell Street. So thank you, Danny, for your help on that. And looks great. Also, just want to highlight that this month is Fire Prevention Month. And I know it kicked off with the Fire Fest. And, we've got our county fire service. I just want to take time to recognize them and all the things that they do. We actually had a brush fire out there off of Sherrall Road last week and had multiple things where our county fire service has responded. As well as I know they are actively going through the hiring process as we voted recently to expand our fire service into career firefighting. So just want to tip my hat to our county fire service for on this October, the Fire Prevention Month. I also want to just highlight my vote on the zoning issues. That was something that was tough for me because politically I don't think I voted correctly. Just because of constituent calls that I received. But based on the situation and the case-by-case situation of what I examined, I feel like I voted the right way. And sometimes political votes don't always add up with voting the right way, but that's just kind of how I saw it. And also to my colleagues, I apologize. I was party to extended debate. But I hope that shows you that when I choose to get on the bus with one of you guys, I'll stick with you throughout. I'll be loyal. So that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Mr. Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, council members. Very quickly, I want to say a special thanks to, not you, Mr. Jones, Ben Connell. We appreciate what you did. Ben came out last month to the NAACP Fun Fest and grilled his butt off. Literally, he was probably on fire because it was hot out there. But we appreciate you. We got a lot of great remarks, and a lot of people wanted your phone number. I said, well, first of all, he's got to represent you, and then he'll cook for you. But no, I'm just kidding. I didn't say that. So thank you for your hard work and your contributions to the Fun Fest. And then, Mr. Carpenter, I had a quick question for you because I've gotten some concerns in reference to the cable company charter that has Channel 39. Is that correct? Who has Channel 39?
I'm not sure who. I mean, I guess any cable company could have a Channel 39.
No, not like that, but I mean, it's like the local channel that shows the information for Kershaw County.
Or True Vista?
Yeah, it might be true. I don't know. That's why I'm asking. I got able, whatever I'm able to catch. So, so none of it really makes sense to me. But I say that because what's happening, they're showing our council meetings, and they're running the same ones over and over, and people are not seeing what's new. In other words, some of my phone calls were, they're showing stuff back in February before the budget cycle and things of that nature versus being current and relevant. And I don't know what it is.
I'll check into that.
Yes, sir. Okay, if you would, I would greatly appreciate it.
They've got to fill up space, so they may be running old meetings just to fill space up.
Yeah.
My guess, but I'll follow up for you.
Yes, tell them come a little more current then. Get past the budget.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. That concludes my report.
All right, thank you. Mike Conley helped me to convey to the planning board, I did not recognize them during the meeting. I did not know they were here. I asked the staff in the future to make sure they tell me when that happens, so I got an opportunity to have them come forward and be congratulated by the staff. I will give a call to each one of them tomorrow morning at a decent hour. Secondly, I would comment on a little bit of our process. Every councilman has the absolute right to put items on the agenda, okay? And then we have rules for how that's done, and it falls to the chairman, and hopefully I have the common sense to do things right. I do follow the issue that says the process should never be the problem. It should be not stand out of the way of the dialogue that we need to have. But let me just tell you about the double negative that got us into a conversation that lasted 30 minutes. A month ago, we voted to take off a meeting in November, and other meetings, but let's just take November. And because of a double negative, we voted against putting it back on. It had essentially the same effect. And nature abhors a vacuum, and no object can occupy more than one space at one time. It's all physics. We voted on the same thing twice and had the same result. wasted a lot of time. Now, debate and dialogue is absolutely essential here, and I enjoy that. But we talked about what is otherwise common sense. And I thank the members here for moving forward on that, but I don't want to see us voting on that again next time by some other parliamentarian interpretation of the word. But at the same time, there must be an absolute feeling in each of the council members' breasts that they have the absolute right to put things on the agenda. And before that item went on the agenda, I talked to the person who posted it, and he assured me there would not be a vote on it.
I did not.
I'll get to you later.
That is a lie.
Watch the language, please, sir.
It's true.
But it's a great county. We've had Touch a Truck, we've had Jazz Week, we've had KCOS picking up, Live Well Kershaw. Let's get on a bus again on Friday. I encourage you to go. We had Fire Fest, Fun Fest, and the Revolutionary War building, and the dirt is being turned over. We have now had the great success by our staff of taking over the airport, and that's magnificent. And as if to reward that, we had 30 airplanes fly in from all over the state, one from Tennessee, to visit our airport and have breakfast on Sunday morning. It was splendid. We've had the open house of ATEC, and you should have seen the hundreds of kids that went there. It will change their lives. They're young kids who, when they go to graduate from high school, remember what we put in place at the Joint Use Campus. Amazing progress. On top of that, winning new business. We've just voted on that here at item number 6. The county is at full employment. I met with one of the companies that we're about to bring in as a project, and the guy said his biggest problem is getting people to work for him. And that is full employment. That's good news for the county. And I just want to tell you, things are moving very well along, and those companies that are either slightly downsizing or retooling, and all that has great import for us as a society. And I congratulate Mr. Carpenter, who has more hats than any man I've ever seen, and he's doing a magnificent job, and I appreciate the way the staff has fallen in on his amazing hard work to make sure not a beat is being missed in rec and in services and anywhere else. In the meantime, he's found a new director, and I congratulate Cato as our new detention center lead. With that, we turn to Mr. Carpenter.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, first I'd like to, Mr. Chairman, the planning director did provide me the list of everyone who is in attendance from the Zoning Appeals Board, the Planning Commission, and planning staff. I was expecting to introduce them as my staff and the board that produced, that supported them, but the agenda moved on. I didn't get that chance, so I apologize.
Thank you very much.
And it was again said several times or implied tonight that county staff did not inform council, and I would again reiterate that county staff acted exactly appropriately to the information as it was provided to them, presented to them, and as was expected, and they expected they should have acted. So I just want to make that clear. The county staff did not mislead county council or withhold information from county council. If there's any reason that they would have to believe the county council would need to be informed of it in the time frame that was allowed to them. So I just want to kind of make sure that that's understood out there, as it was said tonight in such a manner that I did want that cleared up. We did have a great week and a great month. The airport, I got some pictures to show you of what happened out there. Of course, the county is assumed responsibility from the FBO who's left. There's our shiny spot of hope when you land in Kershaw County. And this weekend, there was a fly-in of, as the chairman said, over 30 planes landed out there. This is a fly-in that apparently has been going on since 1928? 1938. This is an event that's been happening at this airport. So this is a significant event in the aviation community that I wasn't aware of, and I'm sure most people in this room weren't aware of as well. This has been happening for over 70 years. The touch truck, we did have over 1,400 people come out to the park to see the facilities and see what the trucks we had out there. We had 2 hours of rain out of the 3 hours, and people kept coming with umbrellas. It was a neat thing to see. I encourage anybody who hasn't been out there, as was said earlier tonight by Mr. Webb, and I appreciate so much, because he saw what you need to see. He saw the faces of those kids by the hundreds out there excited, getting in, and I ever heard two dads saying, when is there going to be something for them to get in those trucks so they can dig holes too?
Mr. Carpenter.
So
Mr.
it was
Carpenter.
a very good event out there.
Can we change that sign and put the All-American City on it?
Yes, sir, we can.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely can. And Mr. Chairman, that's my report.
Would you mention the survey? I missed it.
The survey for Vision 2030 is live. Again, this is the critical part of the planning process that leads to the budget, that leads to county council setting goals and objectives that staff then implement as we see through things like the airport and other projects. It is live. It is you can find it online at visionkershaw2030.org. And we'll be having printed up already, should be done later this week, cards to be handing out by the hundreds to everybody so they can get it, take it home, and log in.
Thank you very much, Mr. Attorney, sir.
No briefing this evening, sir.
Very good. Yeah, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Tucker, a second from Mr. Bozard. Any discussion? Seeing there is none, we move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
And it's unanimous, Mary. We are dismissed. Thank you, everybody.